still of the night, I think of you.
Star dressed casually as she got ready for her hangout with Dr. Yemi. Since they were obviously going out for just drinks, and then it dawned on her she had not gone out on a date with Stanley before, and yet it felt as if he had taken her to the stars and back. She came down the stairs and saw him waiting for her. More formally dressed in blazers and dress pants. "You look beautiful. Shall we?" she responded. She wanted to get it over and done with so she could devote all her time preparing to see Stanley again. They arrived at the exclusive restaurant and was led to their table. They sat and she began to look at the menu. "You are truly a vision. I see why the billionaire is hooked on you." She put down her phone. It's hard to accept that as a compliment when put like that. The billionaire has a name, Stanley, and a title in my life, boyfriend. He chuckled. "I am sorry, I'm a little jealous. No need to be. So, what kind of a doctor are you? Gynecologist? Oh, okay. I studied abroad, could have stayed and made a lot of money there, but I had an aunt who passed away during childbirth as a result of a doctor's incompetence. Then I read up on how many and how often Nigerian women die from childbirth, from things that could have been handled better. So I opened my practice to curb that in the memory of my aunt." How noble of you. But how many Nigerian women in need of good maternity care can afford your hospital? It's free. She raised her eyebrows at him. That wasn't what her mother had told her. Then how can he afford his house, his car? The waiter approached and took their orders. "I know what you are thinking," he began after the waiter left. "My own practice is free to all women, but I work with a good hospital and I inherited a sizable chunk from my aunt. That's how I can afford everything I have." She smiled at him. "I am very impressed. You are really heaven sent with those women. I am grateful that I have the opportunity to do all that." He smiled at her. "When I first saw you, I couldn't believe you were real. It happened at the time when I had begun to think of settling down. You want to get married? To you." She laughed nervously. "In another time, before Stanley, before she fell for him at 15. Maybe it would have been possible, but right then, she only breathed, dreamed, and thought of Stanley, only him. What do you think?" The waiter saved her from responding by placing their orders before them. Then she decided to pretend she had forgotten his question by picking up her fork. "You haven't answered me. I said I want to marry you." She nervously laughed again. "I am not in the market for marriage right now." "What promises has he made to you? I'm offering you a chance to settle down. Are you going to turn it down for the thrill of dating a billionaire for a few weeks?" She heaved a sigh. "First off, I am not some old spinster desperate for marriage." "I did not mean it that way," he interjected. "Let me finish. It doesn't matter what is offered to me and how much you think your offer is worth. What matters is what I want. Maybe, just maybe, all I want for now is the thrill of dating a billionaire for a few weeks." She smiled sweetly at him. "I am sorry. I did not mean to offend you. Apology accepted." The waiter came back with more of their orders, and she was relieved to find something else to focus on. "Perhaps I could still change your mind." "How?" "A few more times like this, and we shall see." "This is a one-time thing, Dr. Yemi. How can I enjoy my few weeks of thrill with a billionaire if I do this with you more often?" He laughed. "That makes sense. I'll probably wait for the thrill to be over, between which time I might find myself another billionaire. I work in their world after all." He chuckled and began eating his food. As he drove them home, she could not help but wonder about the strangeness of the conversation. The man had actually tried his best to please her with his humanitarian efforts and his well-behaved manners. But beneath his calm and cheerful expression, she was sensing some kind of mental weakness of someone who needed desperately to be seen and called a good person. The car stopped and she realized they were back home. The relief she felt was brief as she saw Stanley's Maybach parked in front of her house and he was casually leaning on it. "Oops, Boyfriend, don't look too happy. It's okay. She tried to open the door. I can explain to him that it was innocent. Don't worry about it. She smiled at him and got out of the car. She squared her shoulders and walked to him. Why did it feel like a walk of shame? She had nothing to be ashamed of. It was an innocent, neighborly thing to do. And besides, she had not accepted to be his girlfriend yet. Hi, you're back. And imagine my shock when your mother said you were hanging out with neighbor. I am sorry you had to wait, but you should have called before coming. Suddenly he grabbed her hands. What did I say about accepting dates from other men, Summer? I am not. This is the second time you are disobeying me. I am tempted to find a proper punishment for you. I told you I'm not yours yet. She was shocked at his words. Yes, you are. And in case you have any doubt, darling. He kissed her. She tried to push away from him to prove her point. But what exactly was her point? That she loved him, missed him, and wanted to be kissed this intensely? So she let herself go and kissed him back, telling him in that kiss that Dr. Yemi did not matter, that it was all that did. You can't say you are not mine after that kiss. His voice was laden with passion. And she kissed him again, but this time she was the aggressor, the one in control, the initiator. She opened up to him in ways she did not know was possible. She strained against him. She could not get close enough, couldn't get enough. Have missed you? She whispered in between kisses. Hearing her say those words feverishly did something to his emotions he couldn't begin to understand or control. So he flipped her around and became the one demanding for more. Even after she gave all, he still demanded, till she did not know where she began and where he ended. Welcome home, she smiled when the kiss broke for want of air. You don't know how much I want to make love to you right now. How much I want you everything, helpless and bound to me in passion. Bound and helpless, she repeated, remembering her conversation with the girls. I love different, babe. She let out a shuddering breath, trying to understand what he meant. Come home with me and find out. She was tempted. How she was tempted. How was his love indifferent? She had to know. She had to find out. But was she ready to find out? Was she? The answer was no. She smiled at him. I just discovered I love the idea of being your girlfriend. I want to take this one step at a time. I can wait. He kissed her again and got into his car and reversed. He stopped when he could have zoomed off. As Star, I really don't want to hurt the doctor. He drove off. Star stared at his tail light and smiled and walked into her house. Star did a twirl in front of the mirror. The dress Mma delivered to her was exquisite. Mma was certain most people would be in mermaid gowns and had assured her she would look different and Stanley would notice. She eyed the length of the gown. It was above the knees and she wondered if it was appropriate for a funeral. The Adebolas had asked their guests to wear white for the occasion, so here she was in a white dress she was not sure about. But Mma had assured her would drive Stanley to the edge. I'm going to a funeral, not a seduction party. She complained and did another twirl. Her door opened and her mother came in already dressed. How do I look? Star adjusted the dress as he snatched her already tiny waist, making it appear tinier. Different. Good different or bad different? Good different. It gives off this cute and classy vibe. Star chuckled. It's not too short, is it? Cute is what it is. She sat down to put on her shoes, a white stiletto heels with platform for balance. Her phone rang and it was Stanley. Ready? He asked. About to leave the house, she searched for her phone. I sent a car. Parking would be a horror. Might require a long, tedious walk to the venue. Only family cars can move freely. Thank you. I was going to call a cab, so thanks. She caught the phone moments later only to meet her mom's eyes. That was very thoughtful of him. That is typical Stanley for you. She began looking through the contents of her purse. So you're saying? It has nothing to do with the fact that you couldn't get enough of each other's lips last night. Mom, what? You weren't trying to hide, were you? The whole estate saw. Okay, Mom, shall we? Of course, there. They both left the room giggling. Star sat beside Eva and Charles during the church service. She had seen Stanley but did not have time to talk. He had done nothing since she arrived but hold on to Mom, who was not taking the funeral well. The great Barracuda, who seemed like she needed no one, was leaning heavily on her son. The service was beautiful, and everyone had nothing but glowing praiseworthy things to say about the great patriarch. The interment was even worse for Bosse, as she finally let go of class and breeding and succumbed to wailing. When her father was finally put 6 feet under, Star watched as Stanley led her away into an already waiting car and both left. What a man, Eva whispered to her. Star wiped a tear from her cheeks. Yes, he handled that very well. Star watched as one by one the few people allowed to witness the interment began to disperse. He was buried in their family burial ground in the far side of his mansion. The walk to the main house where the reception would take place wasn't that long, but between the hot sun and her heels, it was impossible. So she was glad when her apparently designated driver tapped her on the shoulder and gestured the waiting black Range Rover they were brought in. She smiled her relief. Now that's how to woo a woman, Eva whispered to her as she walked to her own car. Star giggled. He was being so thoughtful, and she could not help feeling grateful and something else too. She felt like a princess even though her prince was busy with family duties. His thoughtfulness made her feel cared for, even loved. It showed she was not far from his mind. She sat beside Mma and Eva at the reception. She watched as her mom went to say hi to Rose, and Rose pulled a chair and she sat with them. She loved Rose for making her mom feel welcome. It did not matter that most of the women on their table were either married to wealthy men or wealthy themselves. She knew Rose would make sure her mom did not feel out of place. Star heaved a sigh and looked around. Somehow the wind had picked up. She began to worry about her dress. If she attempted to stand up, the breeze might carry it off. Are you alright? Ma asked her. Yes, just worried about the wind in my dress. Helen laughed. Don't worry about it. Before the day is over, you will love that dress. I already love it. She could still remember the admiration on Stanley's face when he saw her earlier. Even though they had not talked, she could still feel from his powerful and admiring gaze how much he loved the dress. Did you find out? Find out what? The red room? Helen said a little loud. Red what? Chuck asked. Nothing, Star answered too quickly. Really nothing, Ma added. Uche raised an eyebrow at them and glanced at Chuck, and Star saw some silent communication pass between them. Star grimaced and gave Helen a hard stare. Hey everyone! Star quickly turned at the sound of Stanley's voice. She watched as he went round and greeted everyone with hugs and kisses. He lingered a little with Tessie, whom he had always referred to as his crush. Go find your own wife? Phyllis said to him, removing his hands from Tessie's shoulders. The offer still stands, Tessie. I can sprint you away from grumpy Phyllis anytime you're ready. Tessie laughed. I hear there's a certain someone you're already sprinting away. He chuckled and drew a seat beside Star. Hey, he said and leaned over, moved the neckline of her dress out of the way, and kissed her bare shoulders. Her whole nerves jumped on end with that one small kiss, and she shuddered and smiled at him. How is your mom? She's resting for a while. She took it harder than I thought. I am glad you were there for her. I am glad you are here. He smiled and placed a hand on her thigh. I love your gown. It is beautiful and easy. Easy? She thought as a warm and excited shudder ran through her. She looked up at him and saw him looking at her passionately. How is my dress easy? It is my grandfather's funeral, and I should try to keep my thoughts clean.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you. You're the one I can't let go. In your arms I find my home.